Welcome to the Doktor O'Kay Show. I am Doktor O'Kay, and our main headline tonight is just keep finding a way to be the best of the best. So that takes us to the Crown Jewel Premium Live event from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So let's start it off with just keep exposing a fraudulent tribal chief. But first, Jay made good on his promise from Raw, and he did indeed show up to speak to Roman Reigns. But of course, he did the right thing by saying that he does not forget all of the physical, emotional, and mental damage that Roman inflicted upon him. And he should have walked out right there because that lasts a lifetime and he should just never go back to Roman for any reason whatsoever. But unfortunately, he said he showed up because that is what family does. But this time, if they're going to run it back, they need to be equals, and Reigns will not be his tribal chief. Well, shockingly enough, Roman agreed to that by saying yeet. But of course, we cannot believe anything that Roman says, so this may just be quite a bit of convenience to get through this match and not totally get destroyed by the Bloodline. But for now, I'm sure all of you peasants love that so much, but this just happened way too quickly and Jay gave in way too easily. Reluctantly, we'll give it an okay. But one person we can believe in, of course, is our actual tribal chief, Solo Sikoa. And in a pre-tape segment, he said that he found a family that loves him, that would never hurt him, and will never let him down. Preach, brother, preach. And of course, he also noted that he always helped out Roman Reigns, but Reigns was never there for him as he sat and cried on the couch for 4+ months and then took him out at SummerSlam, taking all the food off of the family's plate. But after this match, they would have to respect him and acknowledge him as the tribal chief. And of course, for this amazing job that Solo did, as usual, we have no choice but to give this a double okay. And Solo's words rang true because after Roman Reigns threw Tama Tonga into the referee, knocking him out, it was the new Bloodline who took control, led by Jacob Fatu landing several moves, and then Solo Sikoa finishing it off with 2 Samoan spikes to Roman Reigns to get the win for the new Bloodline. So it is the new Bloodline who are, of course, the ones. As they grinded down Jay right from the beginning for several minutes, and even after Roman cheated by taking out the referee, it was Solo who landed a Samoan spike and Jacob Fatu with all of those moves, including his mighty moonsault, and Solo then finished it off with those 2 Samoan spikes. And as you would guess, it is Roman Reigns and also the Usos who are the 2s, and they couldn't get any momentum going throughout this one. They were not on the same page at all after that talk on SmackDown. And in fact, Jey Uso even refused to tag in Roman Reigns when Roman put out his hand, which would have been acting like the tribal chief instead of acting like his cousin that he told him not to do. So even though the OG Bloodline had their moments, they were barely a threat to this much more unified new Bloodline. So in fact, Fatu, Sikoa, and Tonga in this 3-person trio are now 2-0, taking out some of the biggest names in the company, including when they defeated Rhodes, Orton, and Owens at Money in the Bank. And for the other side, would you believe it, this was their first tag match as a trio since July 25th, 2022, which also happens to be the last time Roman Reigns won any sort of tag match without shenanigans. In fact, his tag team record since that day is a pretty pathetic 2-4. And his only 2 wins included The Rock threatening the referee with termination if he literally just called the match correctly, And then, of course, Jimmy Uso delivering some punishment to the New Bloodline last month at Bad Blood. So then after the match, because Solo and the Bloodline deserved to gloat a little bit, they postured over top of an injured Roman Reigns. But it wasn't them who did anything, it was Roman who actually tried to attack Solo while he was still on the ground, which sounds like a really stupid idea. And in fact it was, because that then made the rest of the Bloodline to attack them, and even when the Usos tried to join in, it was not enough, with eventually the New Bloodline overwhelming the Old Bloodline until Sami Zayn made his way to the ring, and we weren't quite sure which way Zayn would go after talking to Sikoa at the end of Monday Night Raw. So Sikoa put out his arms for a hug, and Sami went for that hug, but instead of just hugging, he hit an exploder in the middle of the ring. So from there, it was the OG Bloodline who took advantage, and with each of the 4 of them in a corner, Solo Sikoa was stuck by himself in the middle of the ring. But even then, Solo showed his true brilliance as the Tribal Chief, and just as Reigns and Zayn were going for him at the same time, he got out of the way and Zayn landed a haluva kick on Reigns, who was attempting a Superman punch. So we're not going to give any STFs here, because even though Reigns attacked first, we will admit that it looked pretty bad for him with all 4 New Bloodline members over top of him. So we're just going to let this one go. But that said, for the match itself, this went exactly as you would think it would, as the New Bloodline is just way too strong for that fraudulent old Tribal Chief and just these newly sorta united Usos. So this, of course, gets a double okay. Next, we just keep staying ready to beat the odds. But on SmackDown, we had to have a fatal 4-way match as a singles match with only one competitor from each team competing for who knows what reason, but we had it. So we actually had a really good match here, and it deserves more time, but we don't have time with all of these matches to get through. So let's just go to the end, where Lash hit a Lash extension finisher on Bianca, but Chelsea, who was not in the match, grabbed her legs, pulled her out. Everything broke down outside. Eventually, it led to a stare down inside the ring with Lash and Jade. But Kairi and Jakara grabbed Jade's legs, and in that distraction, Bianca came up from behind and landed a KOD on Lash. But Io was right there coming off the top rope for an over the moonsault on Bianca, but Io decided to pin Lash instead, and that worked, and she got the win. So Io is the 1s, and she goes to 9-3 in all singles matches. Bianca is the 2s, I guess, and she hit a finisher, but she's 0-4 in multi-person singles matches. Piper, I guess, is the 3s because she wasn't involved, but she's 0-9 in all singles matches. And Lash is the 4s because she took the pin, and she is 1-1 on singles matches in the main roster. But this was really entertaining. We're giving it a double okay. And indeed, Io could not keep the momentum going because it was Jade and Bianca using a new finisher to stay ready and continue their dominance in the women's tag team division. So of course, Jade and Bianca are the ones, as Bianca put on an impressive display early on, and Jade was able to stare down Lash and landed a Jaded on Chelsea, but it was their new clothesline electric chair combo finisher that got them another successful title defense. So I guess we'll give Damage Control the 2s, as they had a bunch of high-flying moves, including back-to-back insane elbow and over the moonsault moves to the floor, which were pretty impressive, but not enough to get a win. And we'll give Meta 4 the 3s, as Lash and Jakara look like they have a good future and had a nice flurry of team moves fairly early on in the match, and they were not afraid of the champions. So I guess they'll have to just go back to NXT for now. Chelsea and Piper are the 4s, as you would guess. Chelsea took a lot of damage in this one, and she couldn't even muster the courage to do any sort of high-flying move off of the top rope, or the middle rope, or even the apron, and she paid for it big time, but it was Piper who took that final finisher and ate the loss. For Jade and Bianca, this is their 4th successful title defense already, and they are at an incredible 12-1 in all tag matches. For Damage Control, nope, they didn't get that momentum. They drop back under 500 at 3-4-1 in all tags. For Lash and Jakara, well, they did have their 2 shots at the title, so I guess we'll see them back on Tuesday nights on the CW, and they're 0-2 in both of those matches. And lastly, Chelsea and Piper, actually this stops a 2-match winning streak, but since the last of those 2 matches was back on May 31st, I think it's safe to say that they did not have any momentum from that, and they're just now 2-5 in all tags. This was not the cleanest or smoothest match we've ever seen, but it was still a lot of fun with a lot of hard-hitting action and good teamwork, so this will get an okay. In our 3rd match, we just keep finding that monster inside as Seth Rollins triple stomps his way to a victory. And Rollins is the ones because he couldn't even wait to start this match and ran up the ramp as Bronson Reed was making his way to the ring, and then proved to be very resourceful throughout, rolling out of the way a couple of times to prevent tsunami attempts, and eventually finishing it off with a stomp on steel steps, then another stomp right back in the ring, and finishing it off with a super stomp off of the top rope. And unfortunately, Reed is the twos as he hit a tsunami right after the match began, but instead of going for a pin, he went for a second tsunami and missed. And that proved to be a mistake, and even though he hit a litany of power moves, including a spinning powerbomb, a Death Valley driver, and a superplex, he just couldn't hit another tsunami to get him a victory. So for Rollins, you could hardly believe it, but this is his first win since January 15th. Wow, that is a world of time for Seth Rollins. And yeah, he was injured most of that time, but still surprising. But he is 3-1-1 in one-on-one matches, while Reed, this is his 2nd straight loss, and drops him back under 500 at 7-8-1. So even though he wants another match, does he deserve it at this point? I guess we'll wait and see. And the only STF here is Rollins is getting a fine for attacking Reed while he was making his way down the ramp. But since this was a great hard-hitting affair, we're going straight to a double okay. In the 4th match, we just keep using the briefcase better than those who actually are supposed to use it. But how did we get here? Well, on SmackDown, Tiffy sowed seeds of doubt by saying that she doesn't know who she's going to cash in on. However, when she also said she needs some dirty in her life, Liv said that Tiffy has plenty of dirty. So then Tiffy forearmed her in the face and Liv called for a match. So we had one, and at the end, Nia tried to slide the briefcase in for Tiffy, but it backfired with Tiffy swinging and missing, so Liv got a roll up and grabbed the tights to get the win. So Liv is the ones for this match, and she goes to 7-4 in one-on-one matches, while Tiffy loses her 6th straight one-on-one match, falling to 5-6-1. But after the match, Nia got up onto the apron, but Liv saw that quickly and put a stop to it with a quick drop kick to Nia. However, things broke down from there, and eventually Nia got the best of it, hitting Liv, Raquel, and Dom with the briefcase before finally ending it with an Annihilator on Liv. For the pre-match forearm, we have to give Tiffy a fine, which is her 9th fine, and for the post-match attack, Liv was the instigator, so she picks up her 20th fine. And this match just didn't have a lot going on. We're gonna give it a not okay. And when we got to the end of this Women's Crown Jewel Championship match, it was Dominic Mysterio who tossed the briefcase into the ring and then distracted the referee after she picked it up which allowed Raquel to get up on the apron and kick Nia off of the top rope where she was about to land an Annihilator, and Liv cleaned up the mess with an Oblivion to become the first ever Women's Crown Jewel Champion. So of course, Liv is the one, and she tried awfully hard but couldn't seem to overcome Nia's power. But then she was completely bailed out by her BFF and her daddy Dom to steal the victory yet again. And that makes Nia the twos, and she mostly dominated this one, but her own partner, Tiffany Stratton, and her two near cash-in attempts really put a stop to Nia's momentum and probably cost her the match, and it allowed the Judgment Day to do their usual standard hijinks. So for Liv, she has now won 2 in a row, and she's 8-4 in one-on-one matches, so we'll see who we could possibly find for a new #1 contender on Raw. But for Nia, she's going in the other direction, losing 2 in a row, and she's 12-5 in one-on-one matches, and it's pretty clear that it indeed will be Naomi up next. And of course, we have plenty of Judgment Day edition STFs, with Raquel attacking Nia 2 separate times, with the second one costing the win for Nia. And of course, Dom chimed in on the hijinks, so both Raquel will get her 4th fine and Dom will pick up his 20th fine. And since if you've seen one Judgment Day win, you've seen all Judgment Day wins, this one is gonna get a not okay. Up next, we just keep fighting until we can't have a match at all. But on SmackDown, in another camera video, Kevin Owens said that he does not want to fight Randy Orton, but now he has to hurt him, and it's all Orton's fault. But short and sweet, right to the point, we're gonna give that an okay. But of course, at the end of the night, KO did come out of the crowd and hit Orton 2 times with a steel chair. And for that attack, we have to give him his 6th fine of the year. And hurt Orton he did, as Owens led Orton throughout the stadium and then found a railing to jump off of and elbow dropped Orton through 2 tables so that neither man could get up, and we had no match at all. Well, there are no 1s and 2 heres because there wasn't a match, so this whole thing was just some giant STFs. So we'll start with KO. He did not let Orton finish his iconic Viper pose before the match began, so he hit him with a couple chair shots instead, and that led to the match never starting. So for this attack, KO will have to get a 2-week suspension. But that's not all, folks, because KO tried to keep swinging that chair, but the ref grabbed it from him, and Owens was not at all pleased by that, so he just decided to stun the ref. And then just a few moments later, he also punched WWE official Jamie Noble at ringside. And so for both of those attacks, Owens will have to get another 1-month suspension. But Orton wasn't going to be outdone here, because a different WWE official grabbed a steel chair from him as well, so Orton threw that man into the ring post. And then when both Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis tried to come out to finally break things up, well, that didn't work whatsoever, and Pearce paid for it with an RKO. And now I know all of us would love to do that to Adam Pearce for his terrible general managing, but unfortunately we just can't have that done to a WWE official, no matter how much he kind of deserves it. So Orton will also have to get a 1-month suspension, because we saw Rollins and Reed have a pre-match brawl of their own just about an hour earlier, and then at least they were able to have a match. Because we didn't get one at all here, we have to give this one a not okay. In the penultimate match, we just keep letting the other guys kill each other, as LA Knight latched onto Carmelo Hayes' facebreaker to BFT him and retain the United States Championship in a triple threat match. LA Knight is indeed the ones, as he smartly let Andrade and Hayes beat up each other right off the bell, and then found ways to pick the right spots to take out the other two men. Then Andrade is the twos, and he continued his incredible ring work, including that springboard Spanish fly, a really nice moonsault to the floor, and a destructive destroyer, but he couldn't quite deliver the message to finish it off. And for Hayes, he is the threes, and his best skill remains just staying alive, and this time he impressively stonewalled a BFT attempt before eventually eating it and taking the pin. For Knight, this is his 5th consecutive title defense, and he's won 7 straight singles matches overall, going to 15-6-1. For Andrade, well, amazingly enough, he's lost 6 of his last 7 decisions, falling to 8-8-1 in all singles matches. And for Hayes, he's lost 2 in a row, and he's now 6-11-2 in all singles matches. But this one was highly entertaining with a lot of high-flying moves. This one definitely gets a double okay. And lastly, we go to our headlining main event, where we just keep proving you're the best of the best. But first, in the main event for SmackDown, we had a tag team match between Imperium and Orton and Rhodes, but this was shockingly boring considering we probably had 3 future Hall of Famers in this match. But nonetheless, at the end, we had Rhodes about to finish Kaiser off, but Gunther momentarily broke it up, but he ate an RKO out of nowhere. So Rhodes re-locked in the Crossroads and finished Kaiser off to get the win. Surprisingly, this was the first tag for both teams this year, and Imperium's last tag together was in June of 2023. Wow. But of course, after the match, we know KO came out and hit Orton with 2 chair shots, which gave Gunther the opportunity to come up from behind and lock in a chokehold on Rhodes, which he would not let go of even after security guards and WWE officials came out to try to stop him. So for that attack, Gunther will have to pick up his 8th fine of the year. But since this match was so blah, it gets a double not okay. But that gives us a chance to improve for the actual men's Crown Jewel Championship match. And Rhodes learned from the end of SmackDown, as he was able to get out of several sleepers in this one, including one final one after missing a super Cody cutter off of the top rope, and used his momentum to pin Gunther's shoulders to the mat. So Cody Rhodes is one of ones, as most men probably would have passed out to all of those chokeholds and sleepers, but Rhodes figured out a way to stay awake when 2 Crossroads were not enough to put Gunther away. And Gunther is the twos, as maybe he had too many game plans, as he worked on the left arm of Rhodes as well as his back, and then finally on that neck. But maybe all of that gave Rhodes just enough time to figure something out. So for Rhodes, he breaks the tie in both men's records and improves to 13-1, but more importantly, becomes the first ever men's Crown Jewel champion. For Gunther, he loses in singles action for the first time since WrestleMania, but this is 2 losses in 2 nights, counting that tag match, so he is still a very impressive 12-2 in one-on-one matches. And since Rhodes was actually right saying that there would not be any interference in this one, we had a nice clean finish, but admittedly it was not the most exciting of matches, so we'll just give this one an okay. And after all of that, we still have 2 matches to talk about from SmackDown that had nothing to do with Crown Jewel, and that was mysteriously from parts unknown, but still somehow in New York, and what seemed to be still in Brooklyn. But I guess we'll never know. So first we had the Street Profits and Pretty Deadly, where we just keep working on that musical, because the Street Profits are the ones, and they, with a little help from B-Fab, were able to land a super blockbuster to get the win, and Pretty Deadly are the twos, because they were able to hit a couple nice team moves, including a couple of assisted code breakers, but at the end of the day, they still have a better chance to wind up on Broadway giving their playbill and a CD to Lin-Manuel Miranda, who was sitting in the first row, than they do getting tag team gold. So for the Street Profits, they start the climb right back up the tag team ranks, and they go back to 500 at 5-5. While Pretty Deadly remains dead on arrival at 1-6 in traditional tags. And for STFs, we've got two of them. First, we had Pretty Deadly attacking both members of the Street Profits before the bell, and for the second straight show, we have to ask the ref and timekeeper, what were you thinking? Because again, you just started the match while they were beating them down. You've got to give the other team an opportunity to regain their composure before you ring the bell. Let's get this straight, guys. Someone in WWE's got to straighten this out right away. It may eventually cost someone a match. But that said, Prince and Wilson will both pick up their second fines of the year. And then surprisingly, B-Fab got into the action by yanking Prince's legs off of the apron and then slamming him to the floor. So B-Fab, for that very surprising interaction, we've got to give you your second fine, but maybe because that was a slight good and interesting surprise, this one's gonna get an okay. And in our other match, we say just keep biding your time for that title shot, because Naomi and Bayley took on Candice and Indy, and Naomi and Bayley are the ones, as Naomi landed a rear view on Candice to get the win. But Candice and Indy are the twos, because unfortunately, Candice landed a step up senton and then a springboard moonsault on Bayley that was good for nothing, because Naomi had already tagged herself in. So Naomi and Bayley improved to 500 at 2-2 in traditional tags, while Candice and Indy, this was their first tag match in 4 months, but the time off didn't help as they fall to 4-8. But Corey Graves got it right by griping that the ref didn't count out Naomi for being the legal person, but being outside of the ring for 4.5 minutes. That was probably a bit of an exaggeration in the amount of time, but still, she probably should have been counted out, so we've got to give this a not okay. And beyond the mat for SmackDown, we only had one thing. It was A-Town Down Under interrupting an interview with the Machine Guns, and they invited them onto the Waller Effect next week. So the Machine Guns accepted, so I guess we'll see that. And because the Machine Guns made a nice little quip about Miz TV being the premier program over the Waller Effect, this one gets an okay. SportsZu thought he had a crystal ball saying that there were spoiler alerts for yesterday's SmackDown. Spoiler alerts for a wrestling show? Who's ever thought of that? Pfft, crazy. Well, if you want to see if the SportsZu was Nostradamus for Crown Jewel with his betting picks, go right here to check it out. And whether he got any of those picks right or not, this one still gets an okay.